I always feel like that when we start. I always feel like, oh my gosh, what's on the other side of this?
I always
It
feel like
might just be you and me, but you know, it
um,
always feels bigger than life.
aw. It probably is though, right?
For me,
I think
for me
so.
it is, yeah. My perception is that this is really big, so
Yeah, me too.
that's
I see it as like the universe asks us to be channels, so whatever comes through us, it's like the universe. That's why it feels bigger than yeah.
right, right? Yeah. So we were talking about like the energy of like just life right now, how it feels sacrificial. Like we're watching things fall apart around us, and it feels like everything we've ever worked for in our entire life is crumbling.
Yeah.
And those are all those societal norms, right? And that
Yeah.
helped us. It helped you and I to go ahead and come up with this show to where like we can really start talking openly about that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. What feels right now in our even personal lives that feels like it's crashing?
oh yeah. So for me, it's like the business. If I
Okay.
say that out loud, people will be like, "Oh my God, is she all
Well, even me,
right?"
like right now, it's like, oh, just
But
like a
that's not necessarily what I mean by that, but that's what it's doing. It's like
reaction.
it is in this metamorphosis that I generated. I did this.
Okay.
And it's like a nail biter. It's such a nail biter to see like the butterfly, to see how the butterfly is going to come out, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so yeah. So I would say that as I look around the business, probably the most representational of how I'm perceiving things because
Okay.
it's a service industry, and so looking at like what I can do to like support the community because the
Yeah,
community supports us so deeply, right?
yeah,
And learning how to not not take too much, right? Or be in reciprocity as often as possible to where like what
yeah,
the exchange is beneficial to both parties. So
yeah,
just learning that nuance right now. And it wasn't because I wasn't in that before. It's because I have a new lens now to kind of look at things.
Mm, okay.
Yeah.
Or would
Yeah.
you say that maybe, like, with crashing is, like, that different type of lens?
Mm. Say that again. Say that again in a different way.
Okay, do you think that the old blueprint of maybe how you went into your business is crashing?
Oh,
Or
yeah, but that's like it's done that like, I was told before I started the business, when I was making the business plan, I was sitting with 2 very savvy individuals, and these individuals are near and dear to my heart, and I would trust them
mhm,
with my life, and they helped me to formulate a business plan that was a mock-up that would generate, a substantial amount of money.
okay.
And I was told at that time that it was gonna change, that this is a nice plan, all right, but I
Mhm,
needed to treat it like it was a wheel, all right, and that each bit, all right, was like a spoke in the wheel, and the hub was my, sustainability, okay?
okay,
And
okay,
so right, and so as the wheel goes around, that's community, right? And then you look at the spokes to see whether or not those spokes are true. Is that helping the community? Are they participating? Is this something they find enjoyment in? And then
okay.
if it's not, I just take that one out and I put another one in. So the business has always been constant change. It's matched the energies of our existence.
Well, that's what
So
every kind of business is, right? Like, it has to match the energy of, let's say, the consumers.
okay. Yes, because
Like
I don't like that word, but that's exactly what it is, right? Well,
um,
because okay, so in a very fascist capitalist way, we're all consuming, all
yeah,
right? And we've been made to think that it is only in the dynamic um of a dollar currency exchange that you can
okay,
receive that particular experience, right?
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that that's what it is. I think that that is a condition that we're given in our society to create that consumerism, to
Uh,
where,
uh,
because you and I, we were talking just before we got on here, right? And I said, so sacrifice. What are you doing without right now?
yeah.
And we
Yeah.
found out nothing. We're not doing out. We have everything. We have food, we have clothing, we have shelter, we have water. We have like our basic needs met. Our
Yeah.
basic needs are met. Everything else is kind of frivolous. It's more experiential, right? So if I
Yeah.
want to experience this style of meal or this style of meal, if I want to wear these kind of clothes or these kind of clothes, if I want to blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
So what
Yeah.
are your thoughts? So what are your thoughts when it comes to looking at the energies and how they've been like these last few weeks?
Hmm. Say it again. Like what do I think of?
So like in the last couple of weeks, right? Because we were talking about how like it seems as though, because we pulled a card, right? And so
Yeah,
the card that we were looking at was sacrifice, but also the other one was the spiritual teaching, right?
that's right.
And
Yeah.
so when you come into your awareness, it almost becomes your responsibility to help the next individual. So that way, when they're going through it, because we remember how it feels before we come awake, it
Yeah.
is awful. It's awful.
It's like
It's the
all over
most
the place.
awful moment. It's
Yeah.
the most awful moment. It's so much pain and pressure, and we're trying to figure out like if we really are people.
People, are we really humans?
Yes. Yes.
To the energies, to my personal energy, maybe like me, it's so funny because I'm turning 30 on Monday.
No,
And
congratulations.
thank you, tomorrow, and it feels like the last couple weeks there's been a lot of reflection and like going inward on even like the energy, right? Like the 20s kind of like leaving, and then what I'm entering is in terms of my 30s. But kind of like the question what I asked you, it's like, oh, like, do you think that the lens of your business is dying, like the old lens, and you're creating new lens? So it
Yeah,
kind of feels like
definitely.
the same with me, where it's like, oh, there's this lens of myself of my 20s that's dying, and there's a new kind of person that's reemerging in my 30s. It's always been there, but that really wants to come through even more,
Mhm.
right? And it's funny, even
You're
like,
going into your determined hormone state.
oh, there you go.
You've been in your pubescent, adolescent, I'm an adult state of
See that?
hormones.
Yeah, it's very much like, "Yes, go for it, let's do it."
And then you hit 27 and all of a sudden you want structure in your life, but you don't want anybody else's structure, just yours. You hit like 30 to 35 and you're like, I got this wired. This is how this works.
Yeah. So I'm
I
interested
think
to
it's
see how it
perfect. I think it's perfect. I think that's great.
yeah. So that's crafting.
Right? So let's go back to consumerism because consumerism is like a white product,
Okay, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's definitely a white product because from even from the white history that's taught,
Um,
okay, to where we hear about trade routes and exotic spices and things like that, they use the word trade.
okay.
They don't even use the word money,
Okay. So it's
right?
it so it shows that there's more than just, like, this type of money exchange,
That's
right?
right.
Okay.
Right. And so like if you look at the history of the United States
Um,
and you see how it was born or created, because it was created, this, the, I don't, I use the word United States because that's how this particular country is referred to as far as like
mhm.
politics, right? It isn't my belief.
Mm,
Right? I don't think that the world is owned. I think the world should be cared for. That's what I think.
I
All
agree.
right?
Yeah.
That's my practice. That's how
Mhm.
I feel. Okay?
Yeah.
However, I think that consumerism has really caused us to feel lackful and be overwhelmed with all of the product, right? That they make available to us,
Yeah.
and that um none of it is Like, why do we have 50 different shampoos that all cause cancer?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Yeah, why
Yeah.
do we have that? And, mostly by the same manufacturers, just with different sub people, right? You
Yeah,
know?
it also feels like it's very intentful, right? Like, this
Right.
consumerism, marketing, or this kinda, like, world, it feels like it's very intentful as to making people and I think it is, right? Like, I don't know when it was created, oh, crap. He's, like, in the top of my tongue, like, the name, but it feels like it's all intentful in a space of, "Okay, let's make them feel like they need it or that they lack so they can try their best to buy it, and they need to have it, and it causes, like, these effects, but then they need to buy more other stuff."
Exactly. And so
Right?
that's exactly what it is, okay? So there's, like, a lot of big business out there, but how okay, so when you look at North America, the Americas, when you look at the Americas, right? They
Mhm.
are indigenous lands. All the world is indigenous lands. That's what
Yeah.
we're like, we need to kinda look at that, right? Because it's
Yeah.
all indigenous. There are plans in place by people who were born in those spaces to
Yeah.
sustain those areas and to be able to live in a communal, loving way, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So for consumerism, so here's just basics, okay, of what my observation is
Um,
with regard to the building of this consumer-based nation,
okay.
okay? Because that's what they did. They went ahead and they took a thought process, all right? They didn't wanna pay taxes. That was what we were told, okay?
Mm,
That's what we were told, that they didn't wanna pay taxes any longer, and so
yeah.
this was gonna be the place where they didn't pay taxes any longer. Well, I'd like to know what happened to that. I
Yeah.
wanna know what happened to that. That's my first fucking question.
Yeah.
My next question is that they taught us how to be or not question, but my next observation was that they taught us how to be problem solvers in our own life,
Mm,
in their application. Not
okay. So
our
kind of
application of
in the
problem
box.
solving, right, not our application of problem solving, their application of problem solving, and they started to condition us to think about what should be important to us. We know that if we listen to music, if we listen to one genre of music, we're gonna start to feel a certain way, all right?
Mm,
And we know that it's gonna amp us up or take us out or push us there, okay. So if it's not just a song, if it's only a song that can do that for you, you can only imagine a very big layering and a layering and a layering and a layering. When the snake oil salesman used to go through different places, they would kick him out because he was like no good. And
yeah.
now that's almost God here. That's
Yeah.
almost God here because people are putting in so much money, right? Because they're taught to problem solve. So in order to solve your problem for your physical ailment, you need to go here and go ahead and consume this because you don't have this. And if you have this, this will make you feel better, but it also might make you feel worse. So you might have to take this in addition or do this in addition. That particular, like that whole guideline for healthcare, right, is
Yeah.
the same. It's the same consumer base as what they started here.
Mhm.
So this country, if you really look at it, this country as it is right now was
Mhm.
planned to do exactly what it's doing, to make people rich who didn't have the opportunity of being rich in the land that they were in because of the monarchies.
Okay.
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 And
So
so
it's
when you
already
have
even that, it's like it was already super intentful, right? Or
very
intentional.
impactful because even like okay, so we're really happy about Abraham Lincoln signing the Emancipation Proclamation and releasing people of color, right?
Yeah.
However, he didn't believe that they should be, and this is his word, they should be considered equal because
Okay.
they were inferior and superior. He said that there needed to be separation. So
Okay.
what the fuck is that? Thanks for the freedom, but I don't match? Like, what is
Yeah.
that?
Like, by the way, you're still gonna be placed here.
Exactly. So even though that even though that thing happened, there was still a criteria of limitations, so that way one mass of one style of people, one culture of people, however you want to look at it, right? One group of people, okay, all right, would not be able to get further. And that's how long ago. So even from there, and then George Washington, by the time he was 17, he owned like, I don't know how many slaves. Okay. But nobody talks about that. The father of our country cut down a cherry tree. Oh my gosh. That's what we're taught.
Don't say that. I don't think we were taught that he had slaves in elementary school.
He had slaves, right? Yeah. Heck yeah. Right.
Yeah.
See, yeah, it's not, none of that is in there. And I think that it's necessary for us to really have a well-rounded education. The only way we're going to find that is to go to our cultural bases of indigenous population.
Yeah.
We have to go and ask. We have to ask.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's like, and we have to actually put in the work though, right? Like it doesn't come to us. But at the same time, it's like now that we have social media and we have like Google, it's like we are so capable of like doing our own research with it. Right? Like I follow some people on Instagram where it's like they teach those lessons of their own heritage or their own culture or their own, and a lot of it, it's super cool. Like a lot of it is like how much like they're connected to the earth.
Right.
Which it's so interesting because it's like, oh, like the separation of our connection to the earth. Like when did that start?
Right. Well, it started when you look at it, okay, so our awareness is all inside of like this box that gets handed to us of propaganda called the United States.
Okay.
So if you're in a different country, you're not going to have the same access to the internet. All right. Or have the same permissions.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So let's put it into perspective like that. All right.
Yeah.
Now, because of how the country was set up to where it was very elitist and selective, and it was done that way because they could get people of color, or they could get brown people to go ahead and come and do the work that nobody else wanted to do, because they already had that mentality of supremacy. So they brought it here. It wasn't like it developed here because they were afraid and they thought, oh my gosh, they're going to take us over and I don't know what's going to happen. That's bullshit.
Which, which is what funny, because what pops up is like, oh, privilege, which is how we started this whole how did you arrive there? Where it feels like, as you're talking about it, it feels very like, oh, you guys had so much privilege and the money and the funds or whatever, and you guys were able to just get up and go colonize a whole other land.
Right. Yeah. They went ahead and they took what they learned in Europe. All right. And they literally brought the Dark Ages here.
Yeah.
The timing of it, all of it is just incredible.
It goes back to like I saw one of the somebody said it's what they don't teach in our history books in school. It reminds me of a book that I read. So in elementary school, they teach you Christopher Columbus is like the first one to discovered America and like all this BS, right? When I was in college,
thanks for calling it what it is.
I read this book in college and it said how the Vikings were the first ones to actually discover America. However, like Christopher Columbus is the one that made it profitable. Like he's the
profitable. That's the word.
Yeah. How the Vikings came and they like checked out the land, but they left. Right? Yeah. Right. And Christopher Columbus made money out of it.
Well, they were pretty desperate and they had already had several successful campaigns globally. And so they were already on a mission to capitalize yet again in another country, because they'd already done the lower Americas, right? So they were all over. This is like a large body of land that they just decided to capture and say, this is mine. Who the fuck are you? Who the fuck are you?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I want to know. I want to know what was in your fucking mind. Right. So, yeah. But we're looking also like I don't think that we'll ever be able to really run it to ground where it actually all starts, because even when we had multiple uh, cultural population over in Europe before these history books said there was
Yeah.
somebody here, right? Anyway, we still had a lot of like a widespread, because we had the Asias, we had Pan America, all of that was here. It's not like the somebody wrote it down, hey, there's another country out there, but they got here because somebody had already made a map.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
somebody had already been here. So nobody's
Mhm.
discovering shit. You're just going along a trade route, and you're
Okay.
seeing how you can go ahead and capitalize from those people, because you're not even worried about the land at that point. You're
Okay.
coming and you're taking whatever you can get that you find great value in, and you're
Yeah.
depleting that land. That's the first thing that you're going to do. That's what we're doing in the Congo. That's what we're doing in all of these
Yeah.
places. We're depleting the land, and we're setting aside its populace because they're in the way of our progress.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. And so that's the mentality. That's the mentality. And you don't know where it really begins or ends. Okay. And we, I would say we as white people, okay, we meaning, I'm going to say me, okay,
Yeah.
because that's the bullshit right there. I can't wait to just happen to be white. That's so nice. We'll see like when that fucking occurs. All right. So a lot of it is because we're trained. We're trained in growing up. We are trained. And I will fucking tell you straight, that's exactly what happens.
Uh-huh.
Also, there is like every household is trained. You're trained because of the conditioning that you receive. So you have evidence that
Yeah.
shows you this is how you're treated as a population. And then you will devise ways to operate in that limitation, whatever the limitation is. Okay. I was
Yeah.
talking with Dawn the other day, right? And I looked at her. Now, Dawn was married to a person of color. She has beautiful offspring that are gorgeous.
Mhm.
They have like the cafe au lait, beautiful skin, and they're just so beautiful, and they're really loving people and everything. And
Uh-huh.
she and we were talking, right? And I told her, I said, you know, you and I, we will never know. We will never know. All
Yeah.
right. Because I'll probably die before the change that I'm looking for happens.
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
hoping not. I would like to live to 120 if it happens before then. Woo! Another
What's the
60
goals that you're talking
years.
about? Another 60 years.
Right. So part of it is this, is that we were talking, and I just told her, I said, you know, you and we could be in a situation, all right? And because we're white, and because of how we were raised is so fucking important, okay?
Yeah.
We were raised to challenge everything.
Hmm.
And every person of color, or um however, every person of color, anybody who isn't white, all right,
Uh-huh.
is trained and conditioned in their household to diminish
To stay quiet.
their presence.
Yeah.
All right. And if something isn't, assess the situation, pull back, so that way you don't get trapped into whatever is happening.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's the conditioning outside of a white family. So a white family is going to say stupid shit that people of color will say. All right. And these are stupid shit things to say. All right.
Uh-huh.
You don't want to be down in that neighborhood after dark.
Yeah.
Wow. What kind of connotation is that? See, because nothing really gets said. Nothing gets said, and everything gets said all at the same time.
Okay.
Right.
That's so
But
crazy because that never even was a thought in my head where it's like, oh yeah, like people that are white. I mean, of course, it makes sense in terms of like we all have our different upbringings, but the training of you guys can challenge authority. You can challenge
absolutely.
and speak up.
We are taught to challenge authority. We are
Yeah.
taught.
And it
And
feels like
so,
we're
and the
taught to be
reason, yes,
obedient.
Well, we're,
Like, we're
we're
taught to kind of listen and to just say yes and like, okay, you know?
and I was always thinking to myself, like I would go, and now I understand why. Like a lot of my friends were white, but I had a lot of people of color that were my friends, and I was always the mouthpiece because I didn't give a fuck. I was
Yeah,
willing to say shit that maybe somebody else didn't feel comfortable saying, because, like, I would ask
yeah,
questions like, "Hey, how come you're doing that?"
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It was usually police oriented, but anyway, so
Really police oriented.
that's what I'm talking about, because I was raised that I am not somebody who belongs in jail.
Yeah,
Okay. All right.
yeah,
I'm not somebody who belongs in jail. I'm a white woman. Okay. Who is supposed to get married and have 2.5 kids and a car and stay at home and look like June Cleaver or be June Cleaver and
just
all
like
that
the
bullshit.
typical American.
Oh, yeah. Well, so,
White
okay. So, wait a minute. That is a perfect statement right there. That is a perfect statement right there. A typical American. Now,
yeah,
that that phrase right there, Narita, is filled with so much
yeah.
condition, don't you think?
Oh, yeah,
Right?
yeah,
So how
yeah,
did you start to see, all right? I'm curious because,
yeah.
like, it took me, because I've lived my life in privilege. I'm not gonna deny that. I have had and been afforded every every opportunity. And I have fribbled away what other people would think were good opportunities because I knew I could do anything.
Yeah,
I could
yeah,
do anything. It didn't matter. I didn't have to stay in that box. I could go and explore over here. And if I, got too outside of the box, I'd have to go to Betty Ford. I'd have to go to Betty Ford, right?
yeah,
Okay. But that's a very cookie cutter white version. Okay. But that that statement, right? That statement, so
yeah,
fucking cool. So how do we get away from that? How do we get away from that propaganda, that training, that separation? Because we're doing it in our own homes.
yeah. It's funny because I think there's a thought too that comes where it's like I think a lot of not a lot of people, but I think most people strive for that, especially when they're not white, but they
Mhm.
come to this country. It's like they're looking for that all normal American American dream type
Well,
of
they're looking for that. Well, like, here's what comes up in my head, right? So it's
yeah,
like, Uncle Sam wants you, and that poster, right? It's all propaganda. We have been propagandizing. That's what it's called.
new vocabulary.
Propagandizing our population since I don't know when, since the movies, right? Since the movies and the newspapers, any kind of, like, when they used to give the leaflets out, it would all be in a direct way for you to think a certain have a takeaway, and this is all they wanted you to know. But really, it isn't necessarily all they wanted you to know. This is the opinion that they wanted to give you. They wanted to give you an opinion so that
Yeah,
you could formulate and align to a certain thought process. Okay.
yeah,
They didn't have all the mechanics of it. They knew that if they could create a workforce,
yeah,
okay, that the country would be profitable and stand on its own, and then they may not have to pay taxes to the UK,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So it's
yeah,
kind of like, this catch 22. Maybe they did have good intentions, but they didn't integrate those good intentions, all right, with anything that was already happening.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it was like,
This is like an extension. That one?
right? Right? Did you see that comment? I love this comment. Thank you, Natalie. Okay, I'm Latina, but because I'm white skinned, I have different experiences when I enter a white group of people. I fit in and can speak compared to others who have a darker skin tone. And it was different. Yeah, even skin tone within an ethnic and racial group creates privilege, but it's false power. Yes.
Ooh, I like
Yes.
I like that.
Yes. It is only borrowed power that is given to develop division, intersectional identities. Gosh, Natalie, thank you
Thank
so much.
you.
What a powerful statement. So
Yeah.
true. I agree. I
I really,
agree.
really like how it gives the false power.
Right. And I think that, so, all right. So Natalie brings up a good point because, like, we're practicing it across cultures now. And we're
Uh,
doing it because we want to impose our understanding. And when we're doing that, we need to be really clear as to what our true value and nature, how authentic can we be in our statements, right?
yeah.
So we know that skin color plays a big fucking part in everybody, every single solitary person who
Yeah.
views another person. It
Yeah.
plays some kind of
Even if we
game.
don't, it's so funny because it's like even if we don't want to believe in it or we don't, it's like it's trained, right? Like I remember I had this situation with my friend a long time ago, and we always kept saying like, "Oh, we don't see color, we don't see color," and something happened. I think we felt not safe, and afterwards we're like, we literally just judged that person because of their color and because of where we're at, and it was like this awareness of, oh, we do, like even if we think we don't.
That's
Right,
right.
we felt
That's
super we
why
act
those
uh,
statements are so deadly. When
yeah,
you say, "Oh, I'm colorblind," because I used to say that. I used to say that. Like I think to myself, I go, "There's so much unwinding that I've done, and it's just ridiculous to think that like there's no, we're all one color. Fuck you. We're
yeah,
not all one color. We are not all one color. We're not all one race, but we are all one population. We are all human."
yeah.
And so we can
I
get
think
back to that, right?
I think
We
to,
can
like,
get back
add
to that.
to your question of, like, what do we do with it, right? Or with the American or you ask a question of, like, what do we do with it? But right now what pops up is, like, it's interesting because before I'd had this narrative of, like, no, we're all like, we are all one, inherently, spiritually, right? But it's like, oh, we still show up to this world with a role. So it's like, oh, how can we still be, like, all one, but at the same time just be aware and hear each other's stories so we can have a better understanding or better compassion towards each other?
I like that. I like that question. That's a really good question to put on the floor. So part of it is becoming the person you wish to see outside of you,
Mm, mhm.
right? And asking yourself those hard questions. Now, is that phrase that I'm using? I know it's meant to manipulate the situation because I'm wanting to direct something. Am I taking advantage of the other individual by doing that? Say
Mm,
shit like that to yourself,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because coming into countenance with your authenticity is what's going to help you.
Yeah.
I there's and across cultures, yeah, okay, so here's angelic, right? It's not even cross culture. It like she said, in Latin America there's a division in regions, dialects, and if you have indigenous background or features or not. Oh yes, because
Mhm.
we're looking for similarity and safety, and we've been taught through all of the colonization all over the world in various ways, because it's not all European colonization.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, but we've found that people are forcing their opinion as to how you should live onto others, right?
Yeah.
And so in that everybody's going to be a little gun shy meeting new people. They're
Yeah.
just going to be, it's going to be culturally handed down because they've had experience. So that's going to be trapped in our DNA strands. It's going to be in, like, it
Yeah.
keeps us from, standing in front of a tiger and saying, "Oh yeah, I'm perfectly safe." So
Yeah.
there's shit, right, that is ingrained in us to help us, right?
Yeah.
One
Yeah.
of my one of my biggest aha moments was when the Black Lives Matter marches were happening during the pandemic, okay? And I
Mhm.
really wanted to be a part of them, and I was too fucking scared, and I told myself that because
Mm.
I'm white, it may not be safe for me, and I did not go out there. I did not go out there in March. Now, that for me, because I'm 60, I have like a lot in my fucking head, and I used to do that shit. I was a very active individual. There's no reason for me not to do it other
Yeah.
than me buying into the propagandized fear that those people
Yeah.
want to hurt me, right? What a
Which is
bunch of bullshit.
Which is
What
funny
a
because
bunch
it's
of
like you
bullshit.
want to support and you want to be present, yet at the
Right,
same time, there's resistance that they're the ones that might hurt you, which is it's
right.
a contradiction, right? But it's funny
I
because it's
just saw so blatantly how my head was working, right? How I had a true heartful desire to be a part of something that I felt strongly about, and I couldn't let go of the fear that's ingrained in me as a white
yeah,
person through all of the conditioning.
yeah.
That was the hardest thing to realize about myself, and that's when I really knew that I
No,
needed to fucking
I do
change my
actually see
fucking
color.
there's something wrong here. I am like, I'm watching, I'm taking a video, I'm inside the business because they marched right by the business. I could have easily just stepped out there and marched with them.
Yeah,
Easily. And I chose not to. And I was just like, and it was just all this fear and everything. And I don't know if I was reading their fear because, I read, right? So I don't know if it's their fear, everybody's fear. It's just a lot of fear. And I was like, ah. And so I
yeah,
wouldn't go outside,
yeah,
right? It didn't feel safe, but that's because of my conditioning. So when we look for our alignments, like, why don't you feel safe? Something else I want to touch on, okay?
yeah.
So my heritage is that I'm Spanish, okay?
Okay.
And I'm a lot of different things, but European nonetheless. And it wasn't until we all got connected, all right, that Spanish, all right, Spanish, all right, was no longer accepted as a brown language. Do you understand? That Spanish people are no longer brown. They are European. And I was like, wow, that's so different for me. Okay. Because if I didn't know that, but it's true. It's true, Narita.
I
It's
mean, I
true.
guess even
It's
in terms of
true.
like the
It's
map.
true. It's true. That's hard to swallow, huh?
Yeah.
Right? Okay. But it's true. It's true. So now you have to start like taking little bites of that. Taking little bites of that, and that's going to shake up everything that you were claiming, right? Because like I'm really proud that my grandmother was born in Cuba and my mom was born in Puerto Rico, and so they came in through Ellis Island, and there's just like a lot, right?
Yeah.
My grandma used to tell me, yeah, we lived in Santana and blah 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 blah, and so I grew up speaking Spanish. I just I
Yeah.
had a whole different cultural upbringing in one aspect. And then my dad, who was really white, I had another cultural upbringing in a
Oh,
different aspect. So it was like, I had like, I could easily see the polarity. And I didn't assimilate to me because I was privileged. So I could choose to be in that white world anytime that I wanted.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny, my partner and I have conversations like this because he doesn't like to say he's white. And he'll be like he's like, "I'm Puerto Riqueña," or like he'll say whatever he is, right? But the other day I was like, it's interesting because it's like you can say that, but I think when it comes to being Hispanic, there comes like a level of experience that you will never understand because your mom was born in Puerto Rico and she didn't have to cross the border or like she didn't do like the whole immigrant struggle or like those roots of that whole narrative isn't there. But it's so funny because as we're talking about narratives and how we're trained, it's even that part of my brain where it's like, okay, so you're only Hispanic if you have some kind of struggle,
Oh,
right?
see? Right? The great unwinding. I fucking love you. Okay, here's the thing,
Yeah,
right? My grandmother and my mom, okay, they did have a struggle. They had a huge struggle. I glossed over it. And I would be considered first generation, which is so fucking weird. Isn't that weird? That is just
like,
not right somehow.
yeah, that's so interesting. Like, what?
Right. Because like we're looking for definition. And as we're looking for definition, we're going to assign reasons for that category. When we assign reasons for that category, we create separation. And we're
Mm.
used to doing separation. And so that's why we're problem solvers. That's the fucking conditioning. And that's what we're trying to get the fuck up out of.
Yeah, I have that.
Ah, how about that?
How about that? How did you arrive there? This is how?
That's right. That's right. I love you, Narita. This was a great show today. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it was. I'm really happy I'm here.
Me too. Me too. Thank you very much for filling my heart. Thank everybody for filling
Yeah.
our hearts.
Thank you
Yes.
guys for showing up. I love the comments. Thank you so
I
much for
know. I really appreciate the comments because like that helps us. This will be up, right? And I'm going to share it. So, hey, if any of you guys are following us on any of the platforms, or if after this you want to go ahead and share this sequence to whatever the social media is, we really want this conversation to get bigger and bigger and bigger so that we go into an understanding that things can change. Right now, we feel it, we're so overwhelmed because there's so much to unwind, but we just have to get to the nut of it for ourselves. And when we get to the nut of it for ourselves, it'll be easier for us to unwind because it's a
Mhm.
process.
Yeah. Oh, I love you.
I love you. Okay. All right. So we're going to end the stream. I love you guys. Bye. Mwah.
Bye.